The great hall of the alien fortress was filled with strange lights and heavy music. Alien nobles sat on golden chairs, drinking, laughing, and watching the suffering of humans who had been captured in battle. At the center of it all stood the alien Baron, a tall figure with sharp skin like black stone, eyes glowing red, and a cruel smile that never left his face. The Baron loved only one thing more than power: mocking those weaker than him. He raised his cup and spoke loudly, his voice echoing like thunder. "Humans," he shouted, pointing to a group of tired prisoners forced to kneel on the cold floor. "You are weak. You are small. You are nothing but toys for my people." The aliens laughed. Some threw food at the prisoners. The hall roared with noise. But then the Baron raised his hand, and silence fell. His smile grew wider, and his eyes shone with a strange, wicked plan. "My guests," he said, "tonight I will give you all a gift. No, a joke. Something that will remind you of how pathetic humans are." He clapped his hands, and 2 alien guards dragged a young girl into the hall. She looked fragile, her skin pale like moonlight, her eyes deep and quiet. She walked slowly, not fighting, not speaking. Her lips were closed, her face calm. But her silence was louder than any scream. "This," the Baron announced proudly, "is my daughter." Gasps filled the hall. Some aliens looked confused, others curious. A Baron's daughter was meant to be strong, cruel, and proud. But this girl stood silent, motionless, her eyes staring into the distance as if she lived in another world. "She is useless," the Baron continued mockingly. "Born mute, she cannot speak. She cannot command. She cannot lead. She is nothing. So, let her be with those who are also nothing." The crowd laughed again, louder than before. The Baron turned and pointed to one human prisoner, soldier with dirt on his face, chains on his wrists, but fire still in his eyes. "You," the Baron said. "You will take her. She is my gift to you. A gift no one wants." The hall erupted in cruel laughter once more. The soldier felt every eye burning into him. He wanted to shout, to refuse, but he was chained, surrounded, powerless. He lowered his head and accepted, not with words, but with silence. The guards pushed the girl toward him. She did not resist. She stood beside the human, looking at him with eyes that seemed too sharp for someone so quiet. The Baron raised his hands once again. "Let the games continue. Humans will serve. Aliens will rule. And tonight, let us laugh at the gift nobody wanted." The music returned, the lights flickered, and the feast continued. But in the shadows, away from the noise, the soldier and the girl stood still. For a long moment, they did not move. He looked at her. She looked at him. No words were spoken, but something heavy passed between them, a strange connection, a silent understanding. The soldier's heart was heavy. He had lost everything: his freedom, his world, his people. And now, this girl, this strange silent daughter, had been thrown at him like trash. He expected her to be broken, empty, hopeless. But when he looked into her eyes, he saw something else. Her silence was not weakness. It was power. The way she stood, so calm, so steady, even in this place of hate and cruelty, made him wonder. Was she really mute? Or was she hiding something? The alien feast raged on, with laughter and cruelty echoing through the great hall. But for the human and the mute daughter, the world had suddenly grown very quiet. The Baron thought he had made a joke. He thought he had crushed both his daughter and the human with one cruel gift. But he was wrong. In that moment, in the silence between the two, something had already begun. Something the Baron would never expect, and something that would change everything the next morning. The human woke in the cold stone quarters where the prisoners were kept. Around him, Men whispered about escape, about revenge, about death. But beside him sat the girl, the Baron's daughter, still and watching. She did not sleep like others. She did not fidget or cry. She only sat, her back straight, her eyes calm, as if she had no fear of chains or guards. The human felt uneasy. Most prisoners broke after a few days, but she was different. When the guards brought food, she did not eat. When they shouted, she did not react. It was like she lived behind a wall, locked inside her own silence. The humans whispered about her. She is cursed, she is broken. She cannot speak. But the human soldier was not so sure. That night, when the fires burned low, he tried speaking to her. His voice was low, cautious. "Why did you not fight them?" He asked. "Why do you just sit here?" She gave no answer. Not a sound. Her eyes flicked toward him, then away. The human sighed. He thought she would never reply. But then, in the faint light, she moved her hand. Slowly, carefully, she drew a symbol in the dirt. A circle. The soldier frowned. Was it nothing? Just random. But her eyes held his, steady, burning. Then she drew another symbol inside the circle. A smaller circle. Now he understood, was not random. It was language. A hidden language. You can. Think clearly, he whispered. You understand me? She looked at him again. No sound came, but her eyes said yes. The soldier leaned closer. Why do you hide? Why pretend? Her gaze hardened. Her lips pressed tighter, as if she carried a secret heavier than the chains around them both. She drew one more symbol, a jagged line cutting through the circles, broken. He felt a chill run through him. She was trying to tell him something about her family, about her life. But she would not speak it aloud. Not yet. Days passed. They were forced to march together, to work together, to suffer together. And always she remained silent. But the human began to notice little things, tiny movements, small hints that others ignored. When danger came, her eyes shifted before anyone else noticed. When guards lied, her face hardened in quiet anger. When someone was hurt, she reached out with gentle hands. Though she never spoke a word, she was not weak. She was watching, always watching. The soldier began to trust her. He shared his food when she refused to eat. He gave her water when her lips were dry. And in return, she stayed close to him, as if her silence had chosen him alone. But not everyone saw her that way. The other humans mocked him. You waste food on a ghost, one said. She will never help you, another sneered. She is the Baron's joke. The soldier did not answer. He only looked at her and in her eyes. He saw something no one else could see. A storm waiting to break. One night, when the moonlight slipped through cracks in the stone, the soldier woke to find her standing by the barred window. Her face was turned upward, her pale skin glowing silver. For the first time, she looked alive, her chest rising, her eyes shining as if she wanted to cry out to the stars. But no sound came, only silence. He rose quietly and stood beside her. You want to speak, he said softly. I can see it. Her hands trembled at her sides. She turned her head slowly and looked at him. In her eyes, he saw both pain and fire. Then she shook her head, just once. Not yet. The soldier felt a shiver. He realized then her silence was not weakness. It was not fear. It was choice, and choices always had reasons. The Baron thought his daughter was broken. The humans thought she was cursed. But the soldier now understood. She was hiding something powerful. What secret was so heavy that she would rather live in silence than speak? The answer remained locked inside her. But deep down, the soldier felt it. The day she finally spoke, everything would change. The prison camp grew colder with each passing night. The guards cared little if the humans froze, starved, or broke under labor. To the aliens, they were only tools, disposable, replaceable, meaningless. But one man refused to see himself as broken. The soldier still carried fire in his heart. And now he carried a strange responsibility. The Baron's silent daughter. She followed him like a shadow. Never speaking, never wandering too far, always near. Some prisoners whispered that she was spying for her father. Others believed she was cursed, bringing bad luck. Many avoided her, treating her like a ghost. But the soldier did not push her away. He remembered the symbols she had drawn, the sharp intelligence in her eyes. She was more than the Baron's cruel joke. She was hiding something one day. While the humans worked under heavy watch, she stumbled while carrying a load of stones. The guards laughed, calling her useless. One raised his whip, eager to strike. The soldier stepped in front of her. The whip cracked across his back, not hers. Pain burned through his skin, but he did not move away. He stood tall, silent, defiant. The guard snarled and walked off, disappointed that the human had not begged or cried. The girl looked at him with wide eyes. For a moment, the mask of calm silence on her face cracked. Her lips trembled, her hands tightened. She wanted to say something, but no sound came. Only silence. The soldier gave her a small nod, as if to say, "It's all right. You're safe." That night, when the fires dimmed, he tore a strip of cloth from his own sleeve and tied it across his wound. The girl sat across from him, watching every movement. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and touched the bandage. Her hands were careful, gentle, almost trembling. "You care?" he whispered. She looked into his eyes and nodded once. Just once, from that night on, something changed. The soldier began teaching her small human things, not with words, but with actions. When he picked up food, he broke it in half, offering her the larger piece. When he drank water, he saved some for her first. When he worked, he showed her easier ways to carry stones, to avoid the sharp eyes of the guards. At first, she only copied. But slowly, she began to respond. When his hands shook from exhaustion, she gave him her share of food without hesitation. When he stumbled under weight, she steadied him with her small frame. When guards mocked, she stared at them with eyes full of fire. Silent but unafraid, and sometimes when no one else was watching. She made small marks in the dirt against symbols of thanks, symbols of warning, symbols that only he understood. The other prisoners noticed. They whispered again. "She listens to him. She moves when he moves. She's different with him." Some laughed at the soldier, calling him a fool for caring about her. But others began to wonder. If the Baron's daughter could change, even in small ways, then maybe. Humans were not as broken as they thought. One cold morning, the soldier saw her shiver. She had no cloak, no covering. Without thinking, he pulled the ragged blanket from his own shoulders and wrapped it around her. Her eyes widened. She looked at him as if he had given her something greater than food or warmth. She touched the blanket with both hands, then looked back at him, and for the first time, she smiled. It was small, fragile, quick, but it was real. The soldier froze. He realized he had never seen her smile before. She had been a shadow, a ghost, a silent figure of pain. But now she was alive. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A silent bond. Not of chains, not of blood, but of choice. The Baron had given her to him as a joke. But kindness had begun to turn that joke into something else. A seed of trust and seeds. No matter how small, always grow. The soldier lay awake that night, thinking. He did not know what future awaited them. Perhaps death, perhaps freedom, perhaps something stranger. But he knew one thing with certainty. The Baron's daughter was not broken. She was not cursed. She was not useless, and one day, when she finally chose to break her silence, The whole world would hear. The prison camp had a rhythm. Every day, the guards shouted. Every night, the prisoners suffered. Pain became normal. Hunger became routine. Silence became the language of survival. But danger does not always come from the guards. Sometimes it comes from the shadows outside. That night, the moon hid behind thick clouds. The air was cold, heavy, and strange. The soldier lay awake, listening. He had learned to trust his ears. But more than that, he had learned to trust her. The Baron's silent daughter sat near the barred window. Her head tilted slightly, her eyes focused on the dark horizon. She was still, but not calm. Something about her body was tense, alert. The soldier sat up. "What is it?" he whispered. She didn't answer, of course. She never did. But her hand moved to the dirt, and with one finger she drew 3 sharp lines. 3. Danger. The soldier frowned. Was she warning him? Or was this just another strange symbol? Moments later, he heard the faint crunch of footsteps beyond the wall. Not the heavy march of guards. No. These steps were different, swift, hungry. Raiders, the alien world was not united. Rival clans often hunted camps like this, stealing supplies, killing for sport. The soldier knew the signs. He felt his pulse quicken. Then came the first scream. A guard on the tower shouted before being silenced by a blade. Shadows moved fast through the camp, cutting down whoever they found. The prisoners panicked, running in every direction. Chaos filled the night. The soldier grabbed the girl's arm. "Stay close," he hissed. She did not resist. Her eyes burned with strange fire as she clung to him. The gates broke open, and raiders poured in, their weapons glowing with cruel light. Prisoners fell, guards fell, fire spread. The soldier fought with his bare hands, striking one raider, stealing his blade, slashing desperately. But for every enemy he cut down, 2 more came. He was only human, tired, hungry, weak. A raider charged toward him from behind. He did not see it, but she did. For the first time, the Baron's daughter made a sound. Not a word, not yet. But a sharp gasp, loud enough to pull his head around. The soldier spun, lifted the stolen blade, and struck. The raider fell. He turned back to her, stunned. "You!" But before he could speak, another enemy lunged. He fought, stumbling, bleeding, barely standing. His vision blurred, his strength fading. And then that happened. He fell to his knees, cornered. A raider raised his weapon high, ready to strike. The girl stood frozen behind him, eyes wide, trembling. The soldier whispered, "Run." But she did not run. Her lips parted. Her body shook. And for the first time in her life, sound became word. "Stop." The voice was raw, broken, but real. It cut through the chaos like thunder. The raider froze, shocked. Even the soldier stared at her in disbelief. She had spoken, the possible had happened. The pause lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough. The soldier lunged, drove the blade upward, and the raider fell lifeless to the ground. Breathless, he turned back to her. She stood there, hands trembling, lips open as if she could not believe what she had done. "You spoke," he whispered, his voice shaking. Her eyes filled with fear, but also something new. Strength. The battle still raged around them. Fire spread through the camp, screams filled the night. But the soldier could hear only one thing, her voice echoing in his memory. She had broken her silence, and nothing would ever be the same. The camp still burned. Flames climbed the wooden towers. Screams echoed through the night as raiders clashed with guards. But in the middle of all that chaos, the soldier stood frozen, staring at the girl. She had spoken one word. A single cry that had stopped a killer's blade. It was impossible. Everyone said she was mute, cursed, broken. Even her father had laughed at her, called her useless. Yet here she was, her lips trembling, her chest rising and falling as if every breath was fire. The soldier's voice cracked. You can speak." The girl's hands shook. She pressed her fingers against her mouth as if trying to hold the word back, as if afraid of what might happen now that the silence was broken. But the truth was out. The impossible had happened. Another raider lunged, dragging the soldier back into the fight. He blocked the strike, barely keeping his ground. The girl didn't hide this time. She picked up a broken piece of wood and swung wildly at the enemy. Her strike was weak, clumsy, but it was brave. Together, they forced the raider back. The soldier pulled her close. "No more silence," he whispered fiercely. "Not with me. Tell me why." For the first time, her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to speak, but fear choked her. Then another explosion shook the camp. A tower fell, scattering fire and smoke. The chaos gave them cover to hide in the ruins. There, behind a shattered wall, she finally opened her mouth again. Her voice was rough, like stone breaking after years of pressure. "My father," she whispered. "He told me, never speak." The soldier's eyes widened. "He forbade you." She nodded. Her voice trembled as she forced out more words, each one heavy with pain. "When I was small, I asked questions. Too many. I saw things. I said things. Things he didn't want spoken. He told me. If I spoke again, he would kill me." The soldier's chest tightened. It wasn't that she was broken. It wasn't that she was cursed. She had been silenced by fear. A prison inside a prison. She looked down at her hands, shaking. "So I stayed quiet. I became nothing. A shadow, a ghost." Her voice cracked. She almost fell back into silence. But then her eyes found his. And for the first time, she spoke not as a prisoner, not as a shadow, but as someone trying to live. "But you saw me. You gave me food. You gave me warmth. You stood in front of the whip. You treated me like I was not broken. And tonight, when I saw you fall," she swallowed hard. Then her voice grew firm. I could not stay silent anymore. The soldier felt a chill run through him. She had not spoken because she was weak. She had stayed silent because her father had forced her to live in fear. And now, in one desperate moment, she had chosen to break that fear. "You are stronger than he ever was," the soldier said. "Stronger than he will ever be." The girl blinked, as if the idea was too large to believe. But deep down, some part of her wanted it to be true. The sounds of battle faded. The raiders had taken what they wanted and fled. The camp was broken, bodies scattered, guards gone. Only the prisoners remained, alive but shaken. Whispers spread quickly. "They say she spoke, the mute daughter." "Impossible," she shouted in the fire. "I heard it." The soldier stood tall beside her. He did not care who believed or who doubted. He had seen the truth with his own eyes. He had heard it with his own ears. The girl had broken her silence, and the world was no longer the same. But as dawn began to rise, she clutched his arm tightly. Her voice was barely a whisper, but filled with fear. "My father cannot know." The soldier nodded slowly. He understood. If the Baron learned his daughter could speak, his cruelty would be endless. He would cage her, punish her, silence her forever. But in the soldier's heart, a flame had already begun to grow. Her secret was no longer just hers. It was theirs. And one day, it would be the weapon that destroyed the Baron. The camp lay in ruins. The towers were broken, the walls black with smoke. Guards had fled or died. And the prisoners were left with nothing but fear and ashes. But among them stood the soldier and the girl, no longer only shadows of the Baron's cruelty. Something had changed in the night of fire. A voice had broken free. The other prisoners stared at her. Some in disbelief, some in awe, some in fear. "I heard her," one whispered. "The Baron's daughter." She spoke? No. Impossible. It was just a scream. No, it was words. "I swear it." The girl lowered her eyes. Her hands trembled. She wanted to vanish back into silence. But silence was no longer her cage, was her choice. The soldier saw their fear, their doubt. He stepped forward. "She is not broken," he said firmly. "She is not cursed. She is one of us now." The murmurs spread, uncertain but growing. That night, when the survivors gathered around a weak fire, the soldier sat beside her. He whispered, "You cannot hide forever. One day, they all must know." She turned to him, her eyes burning in the firelight. Her voice was quiet, fragile but steady. "My Father's power lives in silence. He controls with fear. If I speak, if I show them, it will break him." The soldier leaned closer. "Then you must. Not for me. For all of them." Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. Instead, she looked around at the prisoners, hungry, weak, broken. Men and women who had lost hope long ago. They were not warriors. They were not leaders. But they watched her as if waiting for something. For the first time, she realized her silence had always protected herself. But her voice could protect others. The next day, when guards returned to count the prisoners, one tried to strike a weak man who had collapsed. Before the whip could fall, the girl stepped forward. "Stop," she said. The word was quiet, but clear. The guard froze, shocked. The whip hung in the air. All eyes turned. The prisoners gasped. The guard's face twisted in confusion. "You speak." Fear shot through her veins. For a heartbeat, she wanted to run back into silence. But then she felt the soldier's hand on her shoulder, steady, strong, unshaken. She lifted her chin. "I speak," she said again. Louder, stronger. The prisoners murmured in disbelief. The guard rattled, turned, and left to report. The soldier smiled. "You just gave them something they lost long ago." "What?" she asked. Hope. From then on, she was no longer just the Baron's mute daughter. Whispers spread. She spoke against the guards. She stood for the weak. Prisoners began to look at her, not with fear, but with quiet respect. Some even dared to ask her for guidance, though her words were few and soft. One evening, as the sky burned with red light, she stood before the small group of survivors. Her heart pounded, her voice trembled, but she spoke anyway. "All of you. We're told you are nothing. Toys, slaves, trash, but you are not." The people leaned closer. They had not heard a voice like hers before. Gentle, yet sharp. Fragile, yet unyielding. "My Father rules by silence. By fear. But we do not have to be silent anymore." The soldier watched her, his chest tight with pride. She had gone from a shadow to a flame. And now her fire touched everyone around her. The crowd grew restless, not with fear, but with energy. A spark had been lit, but sparks are dangerous. The next morning, word reached the Baron. His laughter shook the walls of his fortress. "My daughter speaks," he mocked. "The ghost finds her tongue at last." But beneath the laughter burned something else, fear. Because the Baron knew, once a voice rises, it cannot be caged again. He called his soldiers. "Bring her to me. And the human who stands with her. Let them speak before me if they dare." The summons spread like fire. The camp would see her dragged to the throne hall, where the Baron waited with cruel eyes. The soldier looked at her as the guards came with chains. "This is it," he whispered. Truth against fear. Her hands shook, but her eyes did not. She met his gaze, and for the first time, her voice was steady. I am not afraid of him anymore. And with that, she stepped forward, no longer a shadow, no longer silent. She was ready to face the Baron. The throne hall was vast and cold. Golden walls gleamed with firelight, and tall banners of the Baron's house hung heavy in the air. At the far end sat the alien Baron himself, wrapped in dark armor, his red eyes glowing with cruel delight. Guards dragged the soldier and the girl forward, chains clinking against the stone floor. The hall was full nobles, warriors, slaves, all eager to see the joke the Baron had prepared. He rose from his throne, towering above them. His voice shook the chamber. So it is true. My broken daughter has found her tongue. The crowd laughed. The Baron's lips curled into a mocking smile. Show us, little ghost. Say something. Prove you are more than silence. The girl stood still. Chains wrapped her wrists, but her back was straight. For the first time, she looked at her father, not with fear, but with fire. The soldier beside her whispered, "You don't owe him silence anymore. Speak your truth." The Baron's laugh deepened. Truth? She has no truth. She has only shame. The hall roared with alien laughter. But then silence fell. The girl raised her head. Her voice, soft but clear, cut through the noise. "You are afraid of me." The crowd froze. Even the Baron's smile faltered. Her voice grew stronger. "You called me broken. You told me I was nothing. But it was you who feared what I might say. You silenced me because you knew words are stronger than fear." Gasps rippled through the hall. The nobles shifted uncomfortably. The guards hesitated. The Baron slammed his fist on the throne. "Lies," he roared. "You are weak." She stepped forward, her chains rattling, her eyes never leaving his. "No, I am not weak. I endured your silence. I endured your cruelty. And still, I am here." Her words rang out like steel striking stone. Prisoners in the crowd lifted their heads. Even some guards looked at one another, uncertain. The soldier's voice rose beside her. "She is proof. You tried to break her, but she still stands. If she can defy you, then so can we all." The hall stirred with murmurs. Hope spread like fire. The Baron snarled, his face dark with rage. He drew his blade, a massive weapon glowing with cruel energy. "Then let her stand against this." The guards pushed the soldier aside. The Baron charged at his daughter, swinging with all his might. But she did not flinch. She lifted her chains, catching the blow. Sparks flew as metal met metal. The force drove her to her knees, but she held firm. The soldier leaped forward, knocking the blade aside. He shouted to the crowd, "Look, even chained, she resists him. Who is weak now?" The nobles whispered louder. Some guards stepped back, their loyalty shaken. The Baron roared in fury, striking again. But this time, the girl's voice thundered through the hall, stronger than before. "Enough." The sound echoed like a storm. The blade stopped in midair. The Baron himself faltered, shaken by the power in her voice. The hall fell utterly silent. Every eye fixed on her, she rose slowly to her feet, chains broken from the force of her cry. She stood tall, no longer the mute daughter, no longer a shadow. "I am not your shame," she declared. "I am your end." The words struck deeper than any weapon. The crowd erupted not with laughter, but with cheers. Prisoners shouted. Nobles gasped. Guards threw down their arms. The Baron's power cracked. His fear spread like poison. For the first time, he looked small, weakened by the truth he had tried so hard to bury. The soldier stood at her side, blade in hand. Together, They faced him, and in that moment, the impossible happened. The Baron, the cruel ruler, the mocker of humans, the silencer of his own blood, was no longer feared. His people turned from him, their eyes now on the girl who spoke. The mute daughter had become the voice of rebellion. The hall shook. With the sound of freedom, the Baron staggered back, his crown slipping, his laughter gone. He had mocked his daughter, but in the end, was her voice that destroyed him. The soldier looked at her, his chest heavy with pride. "You did the impossible." She turned to him, her eyes calm, her lips steady. "No," she said softly. "We did it together." And as the hall filled with the roar of the free, the girl who had once been silent stepped forward, not as a prisoner, not as a joke, but as a leader. The impossible victory was hers.